the nation gets torn apart by religious fanaticism, when real issues get hidden by jingoistic agendas, when fake news is peddled on prime-time shows, I will create the difference through my special program, Hard Reality. Stay tuned to Q5 Network. नमस्कार, स्वागत है आपका Q5 नेटवर्क पर। मैं हूं नीलू व्यास और हमारा खास कार्यक्रम हार्ड रियलिटी में लेकर आ रही हूं। और हार्ड रियलिटी में हम उन मुद्दों को उठाते हैं जिन मुद्दों का सरोकार हमारे समाज से है, हमारी सोसाइटी से है। हम समाज से सवाल कर रहे हैं कि आज समाज में क्या हो रहा है। और जब हम समाज से सवाल करते हैं तो जाहिर सी बात है कि आप अपनी सरकार को भी कटघरे में खड़ा करते हैं। आज एक ऐसे मुद्दे पर हम बात करने वाले हैं जो मुद्दा बहुत आम है, बहुत कॉमन है, लेकिन इतना आम हो गया है, इतना कॉमन हो गया है कि जो लोगों की संवेदनशीलता है वो ऐसा लग रहा है कि बिल्कुल खत्म हो गई है। हमने सोचना ही छोड़ दिया है। और ये मुद्दा है उन गरीब तबके से आए हुए बच्चों का, जो बच्चे किसी तरह से हिम्मत जुटाकर, उनके परिवार वाले किसी तरह से पैसे जोड़कर अपने बच्चों को ये सोचते हैं कि सरकारी स्कूल में ना पढ़ाएं, हम उन बच्चों को प्राइवेट स्कूल्स में भेजें। क्यों? क्योंकि प्राइवेट स्कूल में पढ़ाई अच्छी होती है। लेकिन प्राइवेट स्कूल कैसे होते हैं? जिनमें कोई संवेदनशीलता नहीं होती। उनको सिर्फ और सिर्फ उनकी फीस से, उनके पैसे से, उसी से सरोकार है। अगर उनके पास मंथली फीस नहीं आती है तो बच्चों का क्या हो रहा है उससे उनको कोई मतलब नहीं है। बच्चा एग्जाम में पढ़ रहा है, एग्जाम दे रहा है, उससे उनको कोई मतलब नहीं है। और अगर फीस नहीं आई तो वो बच्चे को बाहर निकाल देते हैं। ये मुद्दा एक ऐसा है जिसके बारे में सब जानते हैं कि गरीब तबके से आए हुए बच्चे वो प्राइवेट स्कूल्स अफोर्ड नहीं कर सकते। सो व्हाट डू? दे डोंट हैव मेनी ऑप्शंस। और स्कूल वाले क्या कहते हैं? जो बिल्कुल इनसेंसिटिव जो प्राइवेट स्कूल्स हैं वो ये कहेंगे कि अगर आप हमारी फीस नहीं पे कर सकते तो कल से आप आना बंद कर दीजिएगा। एक तरफ हमारे प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी हैं, कल गुजरात के 2 दिन के दौरे पर थे। उन्होंने मिशन स्कूल ऑफ एक्सीलेंस लॉन्च किया और उसमें लॉन्च प्रोग्राम में देखिए उन्होंने बड़ी बड़ी बातें की। ये तस्वीर जो आपके स्क्रीन पर दिख रही है, मोदी जी बच्चों के साथ बातचीत कर रहे हैं, बहुत खुश नजर आ रहे हैं। स्मार्ट क्लासरूम्स की उन्होंने बात की है, 5G इंटरनेट कनेक्शंस की बात की है। छोटे छोटे बच्चों को वो एक सपना दिखा रहे हैं कि देखिए हम एक ऐसे अच्छे क्लासरूम्स की तैयारी कर रहे हैं जो बिल्कुल स्टेट ऑफ द आर्ट है और इसके पहले आपने ऐसे स्कूल्स नहीं देखे होंगे। कुछ ऐसे ही स्कूल्स की बातें दिल्ली के जो उप मुख्यमंत्री हैं मनीष सिसोदिया वो भी करते हैं। लेकिन क्या मनीष सिसोदिया हो, क्या प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी हो, कभी इन दोनों शख्सियतों ने, और या फिर उत्तर प्रदेश के मुख्यमंत्री हैं, उनकी मैं बात क्यों कर रही हूं अभी थोड़ी देर में आपको बताऊंगी। तो क्या ये जितने राजनीतिक पर्सनैलिटीज हैं, क्या कभी इन्होंने सोचा कि अगर कोई गरीब बच्चा अगर फीस नहीं अफोर्ड कर सकता है लेकिन वो प्राइवेट स्कूल में जाता है तो उसका क्या होगा? उस बच्चे को क्लासरूम में ह्यूमिलिएट किया जाता है, उसका उपहास होता है और उसको याद दिलाया जाता है बार बार कि वो एक गरीब तबके से आ रहा है, इसलिए उसकी जगह क्लासरूम में नहीं है, वो घर बैठ सकता है। आज मोदी जी से मैं ये पूछना चाहती हूं कि क्या ऐसे बच्चों के आंसू, ऐसे बच्चों के दुख क्या प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी को नहीं दिखते? आज मैं ये बात बहुत एक दुखी मन से बोल रही हूं और क्योंकि एक ऐसा वीडियो हमारे पास सामने आया है। उन्नाव की एक छोटी सी बच्ची थी और एक प्राइवेट स्कूल में वो पढ़ती थी और उसने रो रो कर अपनी व्यथा बताई, किसी शख्स ने रिकॉर्ड किया और वो वीडियो वायरल हो गया। और उस वीडियो में वो बच्ची रो रो कर ये कह रही है कि मुझे एग्जाम में बैठने नहीं दिया गया, मेरे पिताजी बाहर गए थे, मैंने अपनी टीचर से ये कहा कि 2 दिन का समय दे दीजिए, मेरे पिताजी वापस आ जाएंगे और आकर फीस पे कर देंगे। लेकिन उस स्कूल ने क्या किया? उस क्रूर स्कूल ने उस बच्ची को इम्तिहान में बैठने नहीं दिया। और उस बच्ची पर क्या बीती होगी? क्लासरूम के सामने जब उस बच्ची का उपहास हुआ होगा, उसको ये बार बार जताने की कोशिश की गई कि देखिए इसने फीस नहीं पे की है इसलिए उसको हम एग्जाम नहीं देने देंगे, तो उस छोटी सी बच्ची के दिमाग पर क्या बीती होगी? क्या आप उसकी गरीबी का मजाक उड़ा रहे हैं? क्या ये चीजें नरेंद्र मोदी जी को नहीं दिखती? क्या योगी आदित्यनाथ को नहीं दिखती? क्योंकि ये उन्नाव का एक स्कूल है। उन्नाव उत्तर प्रदेश का एक छोटा सा टाउन है और वहां पर ये स्कूल है जहां जिसकी हम बात कर रहे हैं और जहां से इस बच्ची का वीडियो वायरल हुआ है। आप पहले इस वीडियो को देखिए और फिर इसके बारे में मैं चर्चा करूंगी। देखिए ये वीडियो।
क्या नाम है? कहाँ रहती हो? कौन स्कूल में पढ़ती हो?
बाल विद्या मंदिर।
क्या बात हुई थी, क्यों निकाला गया आपको?
सर ने हम लोगों की फीस नहीं जमा थी, अभी 2 दिन हुए फीस मांग रहे थे, अभी जमा नहीं हुई थी। हमने वापस घर पे कहा था पापा आ जाते, अब पेपर नहीं दिया इन लोगों ने, हमको खड़ा रखा है पूरा दिन।
पूरा दिन खड़ा रखा?
आपने देखा कि इस बच्ची को पूरा दिन खड़ा रखा गया सिर्फ इसलिए क्योंकि और एग्जाम में नहीं बैठने दिया गया। क्यों? क्योंकि वो फीस नहीं पे कर पाई थी। आज सवाल ये उठता है कि आज ऐसे मुद्दे क्यों नहीं उठाए जाते। ऐसे मुद्दे ना किसी न्यूज रूम का हिस्सा बनते हैं ना किसी न्यूज बुलेटिन का। न्यूज बुलेटिन में न्यूज चैनल्स पर आपको क्या मुद्दे दिखाई पड़ते हैं? यही हिंदू मुसलमान हिजाब मस्जिद। इसके अलावा क्या इन मुद्दों पर हमारे जो पत्रकार हैं हमारे जो संपादक हैं क्या उन मुद्दों के बारे में उन्होंने सोचना छोड़ दिया है? क्योंकि एक जमाना था जब पत्रकारिता का पैमाना इन्हीं मुद्दों से तय किया जाता था कि आप छोटे छोटे कस्बों में जाइए और ऐसी स्टोरीज आप ढूंढ कर लाइए जो कि जिनका समाज से सरोकार हो। लेकिन ऐसे मुद्दे आज के ना न्यूज रूम का हिस्सा बनते हैं ना न्यूज बुलेटिन का। क्यों? क्योंकि उनको कोई देखने वाला नहीं है। और देखता इसलिए नहीं है क्योंकि आज का जो हमारा समाज है वो बिल्कुल इनसेंसिटिव हो चुका है। चलिए अब आज की चर्चा हम शुरू करते हैं। इस समय हमारे साथ एक बहुत खास मेहमान जुड़ रही हैं जो कि बहुत ज्यादा परिचय की मोहताज नहीं है। हमारे साथ प्रोफेसर शांता सिन्हा जी जुड़ रही हैं जो कि देश की जानी मानी एंटी लेबर चाइल्ड राइट्स एक्टिविस्ट है, प्रोफेसर हैं और इनको बहुत सारे पुरस्कारों से भी नवाजा गया है बच्चों के इश्यूज पे, बच्चों की शिक्षा पर उन्होंने बहुत सारा काम किया है। प्रोफेसर शांता सिन्हा आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है क्यू वाइव नेटवर्क पर। और मैं उम्मीद करूंगी कि आप हमारे इस नेटवर्क पर आती रहिए और इस इशू को हम एक कैंपेन के जरिए उठाते रहेंगे और पुरजोर तरीके से उठाते रहेंगे। इस चीज का हमें कोई सरोकार नहीं कि बाकी न्यूज चैनल्स क्या कर रहे हैं, लेकिन ऐसे मुद्दों को क्यू वाइव नेटवर्क उठाता रहेगा और आप जैसे पर्सनालिटीज का हमें सहयोग चाहिए होगा। लेकिन शांता जी जो ये वीडियो सामने आया है इस वीडियो को देखकर आप क्या कहेंगी? क्या एक जो शिक्षा की का जो पूरा सिस्टम है क्या वो केवल अब एक व्यापार बन गया है जहां पर इमोशंस की कोई जगह नहीं रह गई?
आई एग्री, पूरी तरह से सहमत हूँ कि ये निजी जो स्कूल्स बनी है वो कमर्शियल हो गई है, बाजारी हो गई है। एजुकेशन, दे हैव गॉट नथिंग टू डू विद एजुकेशन, इट्स बिकम entirely profiteering. While I criticize the private, I must also raise my concern about right to education being only up to class 8. In
हम्म,
fact, they have to extend the Right to Education Act till they complete 12th grade. What will happen
हम्म,
to thousands of girls, lakhs of girls, millions of girls who completed class 8? Where do they go? There are not enough schools. There are not enough secondary schools. They've all become privatized. 70% of secondary schools are private. So, where would these children go? I think the government has a huge responsibility to take care of the children after they finish class 8. That is when
हम्म,
they need support, or not just this school support. They need schools with quality education, with the kind of teachers, and many of the girls will need hostel facilities. And I must highlight one more thing, that during COVID, you know, many thousands of girls dropped out of school, and they
हम्म,
started working on farms for their livelihood. They started they also got married off because the parents thought that this is the schools are closed and there's not much we can do, so let them get married. So the condition of girls is pathetic today. We talk about beti
No,
bachao,
but
beti
Professor
padhao.
Sinha, Professor Sinha, more than the condition of the girls, what I want to ask you really is that what about the sensitization programs? All these private schools are being run not by poor people. Their management is a wealthy management. And if they cannot realize the value of emotions and the way they are humiliating children, the way they are trying to make a mockery of their poverty just because they cannot afford a fees, the children are not allowed to sit in the classroom. What action, what is the kind of action which should be taken against such management?
I think first of all they will have to be regulated. There are no strong laws of regulating private schools in the country. They will have
Hmm.
to make an immediate check on how many children in the private schools are dropping out of schools. And most of the dropouts are because of the issue of fees and punishments and discrimination of poor children in the private schools. There is absolutely no law regulating private schools on emotional issues, which you have very importantly raised. And also the law clearly says that private education is not for profit at all. It has to be philanthropy, it has to be non profit. But here, with impunity, you have private schools running schools with profit. I might also add that from the devil of
Sorry to
this.
interrupt you, ma'am. Sorry to interrupt you. When you say that it needs a regulatory system, do you think that there is a political will to regulate these private schools? At least to me, it doesn't look like that the government is very serious about regulating this whole issue.
I was actually getting into that issue. Many of the politicians are those who run these education shops, either
Absolutely.
at the block level or the district level, some at state level, some at all India level. And they have become very powerful. They've become MLAs, they've become MPs. And so, in a way, it is so difficult to combat these kinds of political bosses at each level who have vested interest in commercialization of schools. In fact, I think there is a need to say that there's a conflict of interest for a politician to be entering into politics if they're running education institutions. You will have to be very clear on this.
Ma'am, but education and schools has become a part of the political narrative. If you look at Manish Sisodia, the way he's talking, yesterday we saw in Gandhinagar, Narendra Modi was talking about the mission excellence of schools. So the narrative is there, the intent is there, but why do you think is the political action missing when it comes to regulating these private schools? We saw pictures of Narendra Modi sitting beside the children. There's an outpouring of love for the children, but the real backbone, which is really running the system, that something is missing somewhere. So
I
what do you think is the reason?
I think the politicians are very clever. The narrative is there because they see a tremendous demand for education from the poor, and they also know that the poor are willing to make enormous sacrifices to send their children to school, and they know that the only way the poor think they can get out of poverty is through education. Therefore, education is coming on the headlines of political manifestos, but at the same time, they are there is no elite concern about genuine quality education for the poor. It's only an electoral kind of a stunt to appease the poor, but never to do anything more deep. And it's also superficial. It's only a photo op. It's just for optics. It's not for real investments. If you look at investments in education, it is actually coming down instead of going up. There are more number of children coming to school, so there should be more schools. There should be more investment. That's not
Absolutely.
happening. So these are only optics because they know that now the poor want education. They're
But ma'am,
clever.
is it really fair to the children that you talk about smart classrooms, you talk about 5G internet connections in the classroom, you talk about smart boards, but then you are not bothered the way your teachers and your school management is running the school? A basic thing like if a child cannot afford a fee and the child is humiliated, that really shows that something is really wrong within the system. And how will these wrongs be addressed? By the
I,
political class and also by the management.
I think this can be only corrected with a huge mass movement with support from media, support from people like us, to talk about education as a fundamental right, which is already there but not being implemented, and education as a fundamental right up to completion of 12th grade. Also, to say that there cannot be any national development anywhere in the world. It has not happened because there has not been a universalization of education. You want to compete
Absolutely.
globally, with other countries, keeping some 250 million children out of the education stream. That just cannot happen. You can't boast of being a great education, great country with so much of injustice. It's absolutely shocking, and I think we have to raise our voice in every forum and call the bluff of the politicians when they have these photo optics of sitting with a child in a classroom as if they have solved the problems of all children in the country. I think this is absolutely wrong.
Since we are talking largely about the system. I would like to play this girl's bite once again. और मैं अपने प्रोड्यूसर से रिक्वेस्ट करूंगी कि अगर वो बाइट आप फिर से प्ले करें उस बच्ची की, क्योंकि अब उसके बच्ची पर क्या बीती होगी, उसका ह्यूमिलिएशन कैसे हुआ होगा, उसके बारे में भी बात करनी है। तो बहुत सारे दर्शक इस समय जो हमारे प्रोग्राम के साथ जुड़ रहे हैं, मैं चाहती हूँ उस बच्ची की बाइट एक बार फिर से प्ले हो और फिर से लोग देखें कि आज हम ये चर्चा क्यों वाइब नेटवर्क पर क्यों कर रहे हैं। प्लीज प्ले करिएगा वो बाइट।
क्या नाम है बेटा?
अपूर्वा।
कहाँ रहती हो?
मुगल बटोला में।
कौन स्कूल में पढ़ती हो?
बाल विद्या मंदिर।
क्या बात हुई थी, क्यों निकाला गया आपको?
सर ने हम लोगों की फीस नहीं जमा थी, अभी 2 दिन हुए, फीस मांग रहे थे, अभी जमा नहीं हुई थी। हमने वापस घर पे कहा था पापा आ जाते, हम पेपर नहीं दिया, इन लोगों ने हमको खड़ा रखा है पूरा दिन।
पूरा दिन खड़ा रखा।
Sad.
क्या कहा जाए? I mean, I really don't have words. When you see this video, you just end up in tears. How callous the system is, how insensitive the whole system is. And I really want to ask our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who was sitting with the classroom with the children yesterday, he was talking about the mission excellence of schools. What does this girl do? And Professor Shanta Sinha, you're there with us. I would really want you to say that what is the kind of exemplary action which can be taken against this school who really shoot out this girl, made her stand in the sunlight, that the poor girl, and she's crying that she was not allowed in the classroom. What is the kind of
I,
action which should be taken against the school?
You see, at a micro level, at the school level, I think the district education officer must pull up the school and the private school and say that this is just not on. You cannot push any child out of school. Yeah, I mean, once you give, it has to be a zero tolerance of a child dropping out, and that has to be a simply no. But while it is at a micro level, I think at a macro level, we don't need these centers of excellence. You make every school a center of excellence at the
Absolutely.
cost of denying universal education, democratizing schools. You can't again set up certain Navodaya Vidyalayas and certain key schools for some children. You do for all children, and then after that, some children may be selected. But in the name of elite, giving excellence, you don't compromise on schools. I would still, say that let's in fact focus on what is the government doing for children and for schools and investments in schools. This girl would not have gone to a private school if there was no secondary school teaching children properly, in the government school. So I think it is so important that the public school system is strengthened and is accountable, is called to action, and they just have to follow the Right to Education Act. It's all there, and the state is complicit. Imagine the dreams and aspirations of this girl when she entered the school, what her parents must have had as dreams for her, and that she must have thought that, look, tomorrow I'm going to finish school, I might become an officer, I
Absolutely.
might become a police, and all squashed just because she's not able to pay her school fees for that hour.
But
They could
Professor
have
Sinha,
waited.
Professor Sinha, my concern is that how do we underline this fact that the teachers, the school management is constantly trying to make a mockery of the poverty. They're trying to make a mockery of these poor families who are coming and joining the private school. How do we really bring up this issue? Because you said that media should take it up. Do you think that the media today on any forum is going to talk about issues like this? And when if media is not cooperating, how do we really raise the temperature on this issue then?
I think it requires many things, but then at least there has to be public hearings. You know,
Okay.
uh, Public hearings. There are now state commissions for child rights. There is a child welfare committee. There are institutions from the government itself. Why don't they plan a system where they hold grievance committees, public hearings, where they get many of these issues and then
But you can,
rectify it?
right, you were
Well,
saying that these child commissions can take it up. So my question to you is that this little girl Purva who was crying in the video,
right.
can her case be taken as part of a public hearing where probably organizations like, I mean, bodies like NCPCR could take it up and we could
Absolutely.
tag it to the Prime Minister? Professor Sinha, are you there with
It
us?
doesn't
Yeah.
even have to wait for somebody to make a complaint. Hello.
Absolutely.
No, no, I'm
Yes.
just saying it can be taken up by any of these statutory commissions. It doesn't on a suo motu basis.
Hmm.
They don't even have to wait for a complaint to come. This is gross. And
Hmm.
one example of this, I think, will warn other private schools to be careful about
Hmm.
the first generation learners, about the poor children, that they
Hmm.
cannot just treat them as if they didn't exist. There are forums, there are institutions, they will have to be strengthened, and I think it is so important that we utilize these forums properly. The Child Welfare Committee, the District Child Protection Societies, the Child Line and a helpline. There are in some places I know children have called up the helpline saying,
Hmm.
Child Line saying that I am being forced to pay fees, you have to help me.
Hmm.
So, but these are not being used to the optimum level. Nobody knows that they even exist, that they have statutory role under the law to
Hmm.
play these child protection aspects. I think we have to strengthen them.
But whenever you talk to schools or the management, they will always say that they have their own expenses and how do they excuse a child. But you know that insensitivity, the element of
It
insensitivity
is there.
always exists.
That can be corrected only through
Hmm.
fear of law and some kind of accountability, because their mindsets are so stubborn and
Hmm.
they're so elitist, and sometimes in the Indian context I would even say casteist.
Hmm.
That they're just not able to look at what the condition of the poor is. Somewhere they have uh, taken their own education for granted and they
Absolutely.
think it is true for everyone. It's a
Absolutely.
totally elitist system, and there's a lack of elite consensus in the country about children's education.
नहीं मैम, मैं तो ये देख रही हूँ कि we have so many MPs in Lok Sabha, we have so many MPs in Rajya Sabha. How many MPs really took up this issue? In fact, I must credit BJP MP Varun Gandhi, and I would like to read out the tweet which he put out, and that's when he drew attention of the entire country. He tweeted, and what he wrote with the video of this girl Purva, he said, "इस बेटी के आंसू उन लाखों बच्चों की संयुक्त पीड़ा बता रहे हैं जिन्हें फीस न जमा करने फीस न जमा होने के कारण उपहास झेलना पड़ता है। आर्थिक तंगी बच्चों की शिक्षा में रोड़ा न बने, ये हर जिले के अधिकारियों व जनप्रतिनिधियों की नैतिक जिम्मेदारी है। टॉकिंग अबाउट अ मॉरल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी। निजी
Absolutely.
संस्थान निजी संस्थान मानवता ना भूले, शिक्षा व्यापार नहीं है। दिस इज द मैसेज by Varun Gandhi. In fact, I was trying to call up Varun Gandhi. He was busy in a meeting. I had asked him to record a reaction also today if he could send it on QVive network, but he couldn't do it because he was busy. But he did message me saying that I'll call you back. So I'm sure he's sensitive enough if he has tweeted out that video with this message. So which means that out of more than 600 or 700 MPs, there is just one person who is sensitive about an issue like this. So do you have really any hope, Professor Sinha, that your
I
political
think
representatives will really take up issues like these? And if they
I'm,
don't take it up, media naturally will not take it up.
no, I'm not cynical at all about this. And I think a children's issue, as Varun Gandhi said, cannot be bound by politics. Children's rights issues have to go on a moral plane beyond politics. No
Hmm.
matter which political party must have the same view about
Hmm.
children, their education, their health, their hunger, and they cannot mix politics with it.
Hmm.
These are basic non-negotiables. No political party should have a different view on what children should learn, how they should be educated. And I'm so glad that Varun Gandhi talked about the moral imperative, about the stands politicians must take, and that politics and children don't come together at all. It is
Absolutely.
morality, that's all.
हम क्यूवाइव नेटवर्क पर ये कैंपेन लगातार चलाएंगे। हमारा शाम को 7:30 बजे आशुतोष पाठक जो एडिटर इन चीफ हैं क्यूवाइव नेटवर्क के, उनका एक प्रोग्राम है इंडिया डिबेट। आज वो भी इसी कैंपेन को जारी रखेंगे। और प्रोफेसर सिन्हा, मैं आपसे रिक्वेस्ट करूंगी कि अगर आपके पास समय हो तो 7:30 बजे आप आशुतोष पाठक के साथ भी जुड़िए, ताकि व्यूअर्स देख सके कि क्यूवाइव नेटवर्क इसको एक निरंतर एक कैंपेन की तरह चलाएगा। और सिर्फ यही मुद्दा नहीं, एक ये पूर्वा का वीडियो ही नहीं बल्कि इस तरीके के तमाम मुद्दे हम Q5 नेटवर्क पर लाते रहेंगे. It was lovely having you on the program, Professor Sinha, and do find time if you can join us on our network at 7:30 also.
Sure.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very much for raising this
Thank you.
issue. Thank
Thank
you.
you. When the nation gets torn apart by religious fanaticism, when real issues get hidden by jingoistic agendas, when fake news is peddled on prime-time shows, I will create the difference through my special program, Hard Reality. Stay tuned to Q5 Network.